lot of different websites, and the minutes and video from all the Zoom meetings we've had so far are on that web page. So you can keep checking back to that web page to get that stuff. It's a good resource, good place for people to be. So, all right. So first question on here. Who is testing for their staff or their patrons on a regular basis? Are you doing self-reporting? Are you actually doing tests? And what happens if you get a positive test? Does anyone have any thoughts or anything on that? So I know for our pools, we are not doing testing at our gate for either staff or patrons, but we do have signage up that, you know, the typical, if you felt sick in the last 2 weeks, don't report to work. If you've had any signs or symptoms, things like that, don't use the facility, don't report to work or anything like that. If you do think of anything or anything comes up, feel free to either jump in or post it on the chat. But again, looking for what do you do if you have a positive test? If you're even testing at your facility, some places are testing, some are not. And then what do you do if you have a positive test? Next question, are we having patrons sign a waiver each time they come to the pool? Or do you just have a sign posted at the front desk with your waiver language? Anybody have thoughts on that?
This is Audrey Logar from Campbell Borough. Our solicitor came up with a waiver that all of our members need to fill out at once, and then it's good for the whole summer.
Okay, good. Anyone else using waivers that people sign at the front desk, or are you just doing a sign with waiver language on it? All right. I've seen both. I've seen some pools that are doing just a sign as you walk past the front desk that, hey, if you're coming in to use the pool today, you agree to this and that. But there are a lot of places, and again, it probably depends on what your solicitor is saying. There are some places that are requiring members or patrons to sign that waiver. Next question, 25 people per activity zone. Does this include in water, out of water, pool deck, grass areas? Does anybody have thoughts with how they're going to manage the 25 person per zone restriction? Not a very talkative group today. Or if you are talking, you just haven't unmuted.
A lot of crickets.
Todd Carl from Lansdale Borough.
Hey, Carl.
Just an add-on question to that. How are people determining the size of their active zones?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And, you know, there has not, from what I've seen, there has not been a lot of guidance on doing that. You know, we have lifeguard zones. Is that an active zone, or is each area of the pool a different zone? For the state requirements for lifeguards, just in general, I know you can use lane ropes or drop ropes to delineate different zones. So that might be one way that people can do that. You can split your pool into different zones using some sort of visual cue like a lane line or a drop rope with buoys on it or something like that to delineate those zones, and then each zone has its own lifeguard. Anything else on zones or on how to manage that 25 people per zone?
I have a question, Todd. Our engineers were looking at what PRPS put out, about 36 square feet per person, and then figuring out how big our pool is, how big our grass area is, how much concrete space we have, and figured out the capacity that way. Did anyone else look at it through the PRPS 36 square feet per person, or is that not the guideline we're to be using?
Hey, Audrey, Carl again, I did it 3 different ways. The active zone, I just couldn't figure out what the size was, but I did my 36 per square foot, and then I also did 6-foot circle blocks with lanes between it. But this morning, my emergency management coordinator still thinks once we go green, the max would be 250 because that's how many people you can gather together, which is much lower than my square footage. So all I'm getting right now is whatever my comfort level is. I can go by that. There's nothing set in stone.
Okay, so if the most we could, I mean, our pool normally holds, well, could hold up to 510. So the codes officer was talking about going at no more than 50%, which would be about the 250 mark, which is what you're saying.
Well, that's what my emergency management coordinator said. He said he's most comfortable sticking at 250 because that's the guidance for gatherings.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Individual groups gathering, technically they're coming into our facility, so it becomes one gathering. But I know of other people that are just doing their active zones. They have a lot of grass, and so they're going to let more in. You know, originally I was going to let 400 in because of the size of our property.
Thank you.
Carl brings up a really good point too, that everyone's a little different depending on what stage you're at. Whether if you're at yellow, you're going to be under a different restrictions or different protocols than if you're under green. And the other part of that is a good point. A lot of the green language talks about that 50% restriction with a maximum of 250 for that gathering size. So if your facilities, if everyone that comes through your gate is part of that gathering, then 250 would be your upper limit regardless of how big your facility is. I know for us, one of our pools, our capacity normally is 700. Half of that would be 350, but that's still way over. We're going to use the 250 just because in green, that's the maximum gathering size. So yeah, navigating the language for each of those pieces is going to be a challenge. Anything else on people per zone, attendance restrictions? Speaking of that, how are people limiting their attendance? How are you counting? Are people just having like a counter at the front gate that you're going to count as people come in, and then you cut it off once you get to your limit? How's anybody else doing that?
I don't want to be the only one talking. But I actually bought a counter that has a plus and minus button on it. But ActiveNet should also keep track, but in case somebody wants to leave, I don't know how to do that through ActiveNet of minusing a person in the system. So we do have a clicker that we'll use at the front entrance, and we'll have to have a guard there or a manager there, adding and subtracting as people are coming and going.
Yeah, Lansdale's doing the same thing. We're just using an app on an iPad that we have there. There's a free tally counter one with the plus minus. So as long as the people see them coming and going, that's our only difficulty.
I'm sure the counts are probably going to be weather dependent too. I don't know how the weather is where you guys are today. Here in State College, it's supposed to be like 90 degrees and sunny. Of course, we're not open yet. People are lining up at the gate looking through the fence, but we've got about 2 or 3 more weeks till we even get open. So if you haven't seen yet, Dan did just put up a good survey question on. If you guys can answer that, we'll share the results out later about whether or not we're opening. But okay, so the next question. What about non-swimming pool amenities at your facility? Do you have, basketball court, playground, things like that? Are you going to open those as well? I know under yellow restrictions, a lot of those are still closed, especially playgrounds, although under green, things can start opening back up. And so number 1, are you opening? And then number 2, are you having hand sanitizer nearby? Are you allowing the public to utilize resources like that if you're opening them? Anybody have any thoughts, questions on that?
Metzger from Sinking Spring Borough in Green Valley. We have, you know, sizable amount of activities like basketball courts and shuffleboard available, but it's all closed down during yellow. Like you said, our plan is to be able to open those limitedly in green, and we're allowing members to bring their own cleaners, their hand sanitizers. We do have you know, soap and sanitizers available in our restrooms, but they're limited use now only as well.
I know here in Center County, we've been green for a couple of weeks, and our playgrounds are just our regular playgrounds at our parks are just now starting to reopen a couple weeks after going into green. So I would imagine things like that will come depending on the phase that your county is in. Anything else on non-aquatic amenities at facilities? Anybody else have those? What are you doing with them? Is anybody planning to screen patrons when they arrive at the pool? Is anybody doing temperature taking or anything like that as patrons arrive?
No, or else nobody will get in because they're going to be hot anyway.
Hi, it's Phyllis Haas from Penn Estates. I'm in Monroe County in northeastern Pennsylvania. We will be screening. So before they enter the facility, all of our facilities have hand washing stations. When they enter the facility, they will have to hand sanitize in front of the employee. They will get their temperature checked, and they will also sign a disclaimer.
Phyllis, who are you having do the temperature checking? Is that just a staff member that's doing that?
It is a staff member, and then we have a disclaimer that's been put together by our legal representative. So this way, and we've discussed with our insurance carrier also, so this way, in case we do have an outbreak, we do have documentation of who was in the facility and the disclaimer was signed. The only little caveat to that is, of course, under the Fair Housing Act, any teenager 14 and over really should be allowed to go to the community center or to the pools, but they're not old enough to sign the waiver. So it has to be signed by an adult. So we've also put that on our website so they can print that out and have that signed and have it ready when they come in. We're just trying to protect ourselves every way we can.
Yeah. Is that also, I mean, I know some places are doing that too for contact tracing if they're following, if they're, you know, if you do have an outbreak or something that you can go back and you have those records.
That is correct.
Yep. Is anybody else doing anything at their front desk like that? Or other ideas? What do you do if you have either a staff member or a patron who tests positive? Speaking of that contact tracing, does anybody have plans or protocols in place for what happens if you do have a positive test at your facility?
Lansdale, if we have that, we'll report it to our emergency management coordinator, and he will then take it from there, contact the county, and let us know any steps that we need to take from there. Any staff that comes positive, they'll have to stay home. And we have a notice saying if we run into a shortage of staff due to illness, the pool could close for an extended period of time.
And back to Monroe County, Penn Estates, we are logging temperatures each day of all of our employees as they enter the building, again, so we can keep track of it. And we do have a policy in place if there is an outbreak or we do have an employee that does test positive, how we proceed with that.
I do like the use of local emergency management to help coordinate that. You know, a lot of us are aquatics folks. You know, we train lifeguards in scrub pools, and if you have a county or local emergency management team, I'm sure they would be a good way to help you manage your way through that. We're not alone or on an island here in doing this. So, what are people putting up at the front of their facility in terms of signage? We talked about waiver signage. There's standard boilerplate COVID signage going up. What else are people putting up at the front of their facility that patrons will see as they walk into the pool?
We're probably going to have signage. They have to, I don't know how everybody's doing it, but we're not going to have our lounge chairs out this year. They're actually going to be locked away, and all of like any kind of noodles or anything they used to borrow from us and give back. We're not having any of that out. They can bring their own lounge chairs in, and in the community, they used to be able to leave them there daily and then get them by the end of the summer. And we're not allowing them to leave their chairs behind. They have to take them home every day. And we're also not having a lost and found this summer. If things get left behind at the end of the day, we're just going to dispose of, unfortunately. It's just, we don't want to have to deal with lost and found with what's going on. I don't know if anybody else has ideas on that.
Yeah, we're doing basically the same as Audrey. To answer Todd's question, we are using the boilerplate signage. It's on all of our entrances, basketball courts, tennis courts, basically advising them that even though they're outdoors, they do have to still separate. There is no guarantee, and we have that on signs, that you will not come in contact with COVID-19. So we have that plastered all over our community. And again, that was a recommendation through the county as well as our insurance carrier.
So Audrey brought up a really good question too. If nobody else has anything on signage, I would like to hear what changes in operations people are doing. We're in the same boat. We're not putting lounge chairs or tables out, encouraging patrons to bring their own chairs or towels. But, we're not, at least to start, we're not opening our water slides. We're not opening our diving boards. Haven't decided on the climbing wall yet, because you're usually in the water and sanitized before you start climbing up it. But, spray features, what are people doing with the amenities at their pool during all this?
Todd, can you elaborate why you're not opening your water slide? That's not something that I thought about not opening, so I'd like to know what you were thinking.
So, okay. So let's talk about three things: diving boards, water slides, and spray features. Now, because I've heard from some people to not open spray features either. But to me, the spray features are chlorinated water shooting everywhere. I thought, why close that? That's a good thing to have open, because everybody that gets hit with that chlorinated water, it's clean. I had the same thought with water slides too. You're entering this chute of chlorinated water and going down the pool would be a good thing to do. The problem is, to get up to the top, you're walking up a staircase with railings. And we did not have the capability to put a hand sanitizer at the bottom of our water slides. If we had that, that would probably be a different conversation, that before you go up the slide, you can get a dollop of hand sanitizer, and then you can touch the railings on your way up the slide, Audrey. And that was really the main thing. And same thing with the diving boards. You've got this railing there that people are grabbing and touching, and no good way to sanitize in between unless you can put a hand sanitizer station right there.
Okay.
So, I mean, that was our thinking, and I'm sure there are lots of different interpretations out there.
Yeah, that's in Lower Paxton. We're not opening our slide either, but I used to work for Hershey, and I'm actually talking to them about what they're going to do once they open up with their water slides and everything to sanitize the rails and stairs and all that stuff.
Yeah, that would be good to know. The other thing we thought, again, the swimming pool is sanitized with the chlorine levels. So yes, you can use the water slides, but only if you come out of the pool first or something like that, but then, do you have somebody stationed there? For us, I think we're going to do more of a slow opening where a lot of that stuff is not open at the beginning. And then as we go through for a couple of weeks, we'll start opening more and more up as we go.
Can I ask how the railings, like steps getting in and out of the pool, are different than the water slide? Are you going to have hand sanitizer when they get out of the pool right there, or how is that different than those?
Yeah, it's a great point, Sean. I mean, that's really the question. Now, the ground level railings around your pool, that's part of our staff protocol. Is every 2 hours we walk around and wipe down all the railings and everything. And how is that the same or different than the water slide railings or the diving board railings? That's an excellent question. Unfortunately, there does not seem to be universal guidance for a lot of that kind of stuff. So.
All right.
And Todd, there's also questions about, are masks going to be required to be worn by staff, attendees, and what other protocols you might have for sanitation and of rescue tubes, and yeah, the rest of your equipment. How are you guys planning to sanitize that?
So I can share what I've read and then open it up for additional discussion. So most staff, yes, wearing masks. Lifeguards, if they're on an elevated stand and already socially distant, do not have to wear masks, and if they are wearing masks, they need to have mask removal as part of their protocol for making a rescue, that the mask would come off before they get in the water. And then the sanitation part of it would be part of your COVID opening plan should include some sort of regular interval for sanitizing railings, bathrooms, and all of that. That should be part of your opening plan. Is here's how we're going to regularly sanitize everything in our facility. So what is everybody else doing for masks, no masks? Has anybody read anything different? Sanitizing programs?
We're kind of doing the same thing with the mask. If they want to wear it, they can, but if they're on a stand 6 feet apart from everything, it's up to them. Sanitizing, we have people sign up for times, and then we close for, like, our indoor pool's closed for about a half hour, and then we sanitize, and then we reopen. But the indoor pools are attached to a rec center, so it's all together.
Yeah, we're basically doing the same as well. The guards that are on stand are not required to wear a mask. Those that are on the deck and the members enjoying the pool, they will need to wear a mask when they're on deck and not when they're in the water. And we are opening at 90-minute intervals with a 30-minute shutdown for cleaning. And we're doing that 4 times a day.
One of the other things I've seen for lifeguards is numbering, taking a Sharpie and numbering all of the rescue tubes. And when the lifeguard reports to work, they sanitize their tube. They use the same tube all throughout their shift. At the end of their shift, they sanitize it again and hang it back up. So Dan just posted the poll results up. So it looks like most people, about 2/3 are opening, about 1/3 is not opening. So thanks, Dan, for sharing that. One other question here, I'm gonna just step away from my computer for a sec to grab my electronic whistle. Fox 40 does sell an electronic whistle, looks like this. There's 3 different sound settings on it. I gotta find a place where it doesn't disappear into my virtual background. I bought these for my guards that are wearing masks. They can use an electronic whistle either to enforce rules or to activate the EAP. So there's options for that. I also worried about my lifeguards, even if they're not using that, if they're using the regular whistle, blowing air through a whistle and spraying that air wherever it goes might not be the best optics. So encouraging most of my staff in the stand to use those. But again, that's one more piece of equipment that needs to be disinfected in between different guards using it. So BK just also posted moving towards bag valve masks for rescue equipment or rescue breaths. The Red Cross has modified their rescue breathing technique for bag valve masks, and they've made it a 1-person skill. So I know all the lifeguard classes we've taught here for the last 15, 20 years it's always been a 2-person skill. Now the Red Cross has made that into a 1-person skill. Again, another layer of protection for your staff as they're performing rescues. So good. Anything else on features, sanitation? Lifeguard equipment. Is anybody, okay, so if you're, let's say you're not opening your water slides or you're changing operational protocols, you're only allowed to be in the pool for 45 minutes or you're only allowed to be there for an hour and a half and everybody's getting kicked out. What are we doing with our fee structure? Are we charging less for daily admissions? Are you giving a discount for memberships? What's everybody doing with that?
We changed our prices based on how many days we now will technically be able to be opened. But our daily fee is staying the same, but our pool's only being open for residents this year just because of the capacity. And they're the ones who will most likely will have to deal with the red that we're going to be in at the end of the summer. So council decided to have it only open to the taxpayers. And so the ones who will have to, that's where the funding will have to come from. And then, but the members can bring up to 4 guests.
Good. Thank you, Audrey.
A lot of the pools in Berks County are not having guests this year because of the capacity limitations and also because of contact tracing. So we haven't decided. We're a community pool, so we're self-funded, and we have not, we normally give a $10 discount, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but if people join up to 2 weeks before we open, which is normally Memorial Day weekend, we just extended that discount for everybody for the entire summer, but we kept the fee the same. We didn't lower it. We're opening an hour earlier every day. Instead of at noon, we're opening at 11 and kind of saying that's kind of our give back for opening later. We're hoping to open on the 22nd if we can get the water in till then and finish all our maintenance. But our big problem is there's so many things that need to be interpreted. There's no solid guidance on a lot of this stuff, and that's where we're struggling. We have a very, very large facility. Our pool used to be an amusement park years ago. It's a round pool with the deep in the center, and there's a ton of green space around it. I forget what our square footage is. We had heard the number of 170 square foot per person, and we could get, using that figure, we could get 700 people in our facility. We don't normally have that many, only on 4th of July and maybe some very hot weekend days. But if you're saying 250 is the max, you know, we decided last night to open. We could never afford to open on only having 250 in the pool. And our membership's given us like, we're having a lot of questions on people who don't want to join if we do time slots because they want to come and stay all day. So it's really, we're walking the fence right now. It's tough.
We did the same thing that you did, Sharon. We have that $10 discount if you purchase by a certain time, and we extended that the whole summer. We're looking to open maybe June 27th, which is about a month late, but we're doing the same thing. You know, we don't have swim team or swim lessons in the morning because we're not doing any programming like that. So we're going to open to the public at 7 a.m. instead of noon, because we used to have swim team in from 7 a.m. to 10 and swim lessons from 10 to noon. Let's just open that up to the public. We're going to have adult lap swim early and some family time, maybe for families with kids 10 and under till noon. And then from noon to 8, our general swim, hoping to stretch that capacity limitation out across the whole day. But yeah, so we're doing the same thing. We're just going to keep that discount all summer long. And then our daily admission is the same, hoping that by allowing for additional time during the day that the membership will be okay with that. The other thing we're looking to do is maybe stay open a little later in the fall. We usually close Labor Day weekend, and maybe we can see if we can stay open. If we get a stretch of nice weather in September, stay open then too. So
see, that's our concern. I was going to say that's our concern too, because a lot of the colleges are going back early. And we're concerned that we're not going to have enough guards in August, in middle to late. It's normally difficult. Labor Day's later this year. And, you know, with high school kids starting sports, and who knows what's going to happen with that this fall. And the college kids potentially going back earlier in August, you know, we could really be strapped for guards the end of August.
Yeah, if the kids go back. That's always a question. I know there's a lot of kids around here. I mean, we're right here with Penn State, and there's a lot of people. Penn State has not announced whether they're bringing students back fully for the fall, or and there's a lot of students that are thinking about taking a year off. If they are going to have to do virtual learning, a world campus or something like that, they're thinking maybe I'll just take a year off and not go back. So, but
I know that Penn State, for those of us in Pennsylvania, is planning on having the decision made by the 15th of June.
15th. Yeah.
So, and it may come out a little bit earlier, according to my wife. Todd, I wanted to just clarify for those who may not know that the 36 square feet comes from the 6-foot recommended social distancing around somebody. So if you put somebody in the middle of that square, they have 6 feet all around them for the social distancing. And I just re-looked at the governor's plan, and even in the green phase, you were right in the beginning of the meeting, it said large gatherings of more than 250 people prohibited. So I think your interpretation of that as being sort of the maximum for your pool, unless you have an really expansive pool area, is probably correct. So
There was a guy on here last meeting, and I can't recall which facility he had, but I know he had an aerial photo of his pool facility, and they had a huge grassy area and several pools, and he had spaced out sections of the pool. I just don't see how you could limit an extremely large grassy area and pool to 250 people. I don't know.
And I wouldn't argue with you on that one. I live in town with Todd's pools, and I can see why he's thinking the 250, because there's not that much space around those pools. But yeah, I think whatever your local solicitor and things, those are the people you have to pay attention to. PRPS put out these guidelines as our best understanding of CDC guidelines, the governor's plan, NRPA's recommendations. We've been examining them for months and just putting out our guidelines as our best recommendations. And I think, I hate to push it off to someone else, but your solicitor, your insurance company, your government or governing agencies, you need to really consult with them and walk forward with everybody in agreement.
Yeah,
Yep.
when it comes down to it, it's going to be your comfort level, because there's not anybody out there going to be enforcing it. So as long as you and your board are comfortable with it and you have a plan in place, that's the best you can do.
that's a really good point, Carl, is that there is no enforcement agency that's been universally acknowledged to enforce any of this anyways. Now, depending on where you're at, it might be local code enforcement. You might have health department coming in. But beyond that, I don't know, everybody's facility is a little different. I usually get the health department once a summer. Our code enforcement does a walkthrough once a summer. That's about it. Are they going to be out checking on your COVID protocols? So again, it would be a question for whoever's enforcing that, and then your legal counsel or insurance company beyond that. So good. Anything else on fees, fee structure changes? Is anybody else doing anything different with their fees this summer under restricted guidelines?
My name is Gina. I'm from Lower Marion Township, right outside of Philadelphia. And what we're doing, we usually have 3 tiers of memberships for the early registration, then mid, and then the final tier, which is the most expensive, to try and get people to register early. So we're taking all that away and refunding everyone, and then charging a base membership fee of $5 a person. And then a daily fee of like $2 or $2.50, depending. We have 2 pools, one's much larger. And then having 4 time slots. We're opening up earlier. Like you said, Todd, we're opening at 9 and staying open till 9. So we'll have 4 time slots of the hour-and-a-half time to swim, and then a half-hour cleaning.
Good. Thank you for sharing. So related to that, the question came up, what if you reach capacity? What do you do if you reach capacity? If, you know, somebody shows up, hey, I bought this membership and now I can't come into the pool. I mean, is this just a public education piece? Hey, it's 90 degrees and we do have limits. We have to be safe. Has anybody thought through what they're going to do in those situations?
So land sale, again, we're going to notify everyone there's a chance the pool could get closed early if on heavy use days. We are going to do some public address announcements on those days, encouraging people to limit their time out of respect for others so everybody can come in. But when it comes down to it, if the pool's full, they have to wait.
Yeah, as Carl said, we're doing the same thing. That's the part I'm most dreading, more or less people waiting outside like a restaurant. But and I'm hoping that maybe people will see people waiting outside, but we'll probably make announcements. I think that's a great idea. See how it goes.
I also foresee, you know, you had mentioned all your staff going back to school in late August. We might have similar issues then that not only do we have COVID restrictions, but we're losing staff. And so we might have to shut part of the facility down just because we can't guard it or staff it. Same kind of thing. We're just going to have to educate the public. We're looking at possibly even putting up shade structures out in front of our pool. So if people are waiting, maybe we'll have some tables, chairs, and shade for them to sit under while they're waiting to get in the gate. Hopefully you won't get Karen with her 6 kids and stroller dressing down your 16-year-old staff member because she can't get in the pool. What is anybody doing with concessions? Has anybody thought about what they're doing with concessions under all of this?
Our concession stand people were wonderful the last 2 years. They've run into some difficult situations, including we had a big storm come through here last week and they lost $5,000 worth of inventory at their store because we were without power for 2 days. So they contacted our board president yesterday and said they're not sure if they can even do it this summer. And we came up with the idea last night at our board meeting, we may contact local food trucks and have them come in once a day, like set up a schedule, you know, different food truck every day. I mean, this is just our thinking. We haven't contacted anyone yet because the food trucks aren't able to go right now to any of the carnivals or fairs because they've all been closed down and they may be looking for an extra source of income.
That's a great point. I didn't even think of that, but yeah, everything else is shut down. So, you know, we've done that in the past, had food trucks come in, and that's usually been pretty successful if you can advertise to your membership that that's what you're doing. The sporadic, when they show up sporadically, they don't do as well because families will make other plans. But if they know for sure that the taco truck's there Tuesdays and the falafel truck is there Thursdays, and you know, whatever it is that they know, oh, if I go to the pool and that truck's going to be there, I can get dinner for my family. So that's a great point. For us, we're doing, we typically only do like bottled soda, bottled water, prepackaged ice cream products and things like that. And we are only going to sell bottled water this year that our staff can wipe down before they hand it over the counter. We're not going to do any of the other concessions, at least to start. What about anybody else? What are you doing with concessions?
I have a question about concessions. We're not opening our snack shack this summer, but I saw in the PRPS guidelines about not having any food inside the facilities in green. So we weren't allowing any food to be brought in, and if they wanted to eat, they had to go to their cars. Is that what others are doing, or you guys are allowing food to come in?
Why wouldn't you allow, I'm just asking, why wouldn't you allow food to come in?
Because it's set, that's what I read in the under indoor and outdoor pools under green. It says no food allowed in any facility at any time. So that's why I considered the pool a facility. Is that not accurate?
I had seen the same thing, Audrey, because when they were talking about the food, I was like, that's great, because if our pool would have opened, we weren't going to have the concession stand. So I feel like the same. I've seen that somewhere. I'm not exactly sure where.
It's in there. It's in the reopening, the revised reopening guidelines from the 23rd.
Yeah.
No food allowed in any facility at any time. Sports drinks, water is allowed if brought by patrons.
Yeah, so that's why we were just gonna, when we send out all of our information, hopefully by Friday, we're trying to get everything together by then, just telling them that they can bring in water and Gatorade, but no other foods allowed. And the lifeguards won't work more than, 4-hour shift or however the managers figure that out. And if they're there longer, they'd go out to their cars and eat and then come back in.
Yeah.
So we're going to treat it as if it's a restaurant. We have an outside vendor and they can do curbside pickup, and wherever the people eat it, they eat it.
I think that's a good idea. I think it also depends on your setup. Like some facilities might have more easily delineated structures, like pools inside fences, limited space inside, outside fences. That's how we're controlling how people come and go from different active areas. And just to add to this discussion, we are offering our normal services takeout only. So our facility that works with our food is doing CDC and health code guidelines for everything that they handle, but doing counter service takeout only, which is not usual for us. But that's all outside of our designated pool area, well outside in our fenced in area. So I think that's safe, but for those that don't have that, it's got to be tough.
We were not going to offer any concessions at all, but all of our water fountains are going to remain bagged. And so since they're all going to remain bagged up, we felt we had to have water at least for sale just in case somebody needed it. So that was an option we had for that. But good. Anything else on concessions? I do like the idea of pawning that responsibility off to somebody else, to an outside vendor.
Are you guys putting your picnic tables out? We felt that we could do that because they're allowing outside dining right now at bars and restaurants. So we figured it would be the same thing.
We have some pretty heavy concrete ones. Sorry, we have some heavy concrete ones. We're going to leave self-sanitizing stuff on them. So if somebody wants to sit there, they can spray it down themselves. If they don't feel like they need to, they don't have to. But there's a limited number of them, not very many.
And Todd, I will say, I'm just going back to, looking at the outdoor pools and what it does in fact say that. And I'm just thinking that this was probably put in there out of an abundance of caution. If you can't do it safely, don't do it. And it sounds like some of the workarounds that you guys have been talking about are ways that you can get that done. So again, guidelines, and that's what we're recommending, unless you can figure out a good way to work around all that. Because you have to think about, if you sell that stuff, invariably it's going to end up as trash on the ground somewhere, and then somebody's got to pick it up, and you're looking at a whole host of problems. Not that everything gets put on the ground, but it does happen. So I think that's where PRPS was coming from with that.
Nobody ever litters at my pool. I don't know what you're talking about.
How are your members handling? I don't know if you've had contact with them yet, but how are they handling all these restrictions? Our membership is miserable. They complain at every little thing we want to do.
So I can only speak for us. We're not open yet. We've started putting this out, but most of our membership just wants us to open. Beyond that, I think they understand that we have to abide by all of these regulations, but they've been cooped up with their kids now for 3 months, and they just want to get them out and go to a pool. Now, granted, we haven't opened yet. So once we open, I'm sure, everything will start hitting the fan in terms of why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? But my go-to is going to be, I'm sorry, the cost of being open is we have to abide by these restrictions.
Okay. We also said to our patrons that we were going to require masks on entrance and exit, in the bathrooms, in line at the concession stand when we thought we were having one. So I guess we have to do that in line at food trucks if that's what we choose to do, and in the office. and we're only allowing one family group or one person at a time in the office. So I don't know how everybody else is doing it, because people were asking us, do we need to have masks on when we're sitting with our talent, sitting at our talent? Like, if you're 6 feet away from somebody, you don't have to wear a mask. Any comments or thoughts on that?
Yeah, Sharon, that's similar to what we're doing. If you're mobile, then wear the mask. That's what we're saying. If you go to the bathroom or you need to walk around, then wear the mask. If you're sitting there, distance, no. You know, same thing you had. But we have been open for, I think, since Friday. So three days now. And I'll back up Todd's statement. When we did open, it was a big concern to see how people would act and what they'd be like. And we found, I mean, so far that everyone's just really, really happy to have something to do and to be outside on nice days. And they're paying attention to directions, following the guidelines so far. I'm sure it's going to come soon when that's not going to happen. But so far, everything's been really good. And I think you'll find that folks more than want to just complain, they just want to kind of enjoy themselves and have their summer pool time, you know?
Anyone else on masks or what you're going to require or ask your patrons to do with that?
Similar to what Sharon said and Robert said, we're going to require the masks inside the pool house, but not inside the pool area, like where they swim. But we're going to be asking for social distancing, obviously. But that's what we're going to try. We open starting the 19th, so we'll see how it goes. But all the calls have been pretty positive. They're just, like they said, they're just happy that we're going to be opening, and you know, hopefully they just respect the guidelines, because otherwise we can't be open. So.
One of the things we've had to explain to some of our patrons is I wish the governor had used a different color than green for the phase that we're in. I wish it had gone like red, orange, and yellow, where the green is actually yellow, because a lot of people think green means just go and everything's back to normal, and green is not back to normal. Yeah. Green is the final phase before getting back to normal, but it's really not there yet. So again, just that public education piece that, you know, we are still in a restricted phase under green. So Dan, I like that sign. That's pretty good. But
that's good. This is my interpretation of green. It's still a stop sign.
Yeah. We're getting towards the end of our allotted hour here. Does anyone else have any other questions or anything? I'm going back through the chat. Is there anything else anybody wanted to talk about? We got through most of the pre-submitted questions.
I do have one question. This is Sue from Mechanicsburg. Our outdoor pool is not opening, and we are affiliated with our school district. And we had originally scheduled swim lessons for the month of July. We are trying to plan on having them, but I was wondering, is anyone else offering? I mean, I can't recall seeing anything about not being allowed to have swim lessons unless social distancing is happening. So is anyone that's opening, are you going to have swim lessons, and how are you going to handle the situations that can arise from that?
So I know for us, we are not doing swim team or swim lessons all summer. We canceled all those. We're going to reevaluate to see whether we do them. We're like you, we partner with the school district in the fall. We're waiting to see whether we do it again in the fall, kind of based on where we're at with that. But anyone else for swim lessons?
We're not offering swim lessons either, or swim team.
Our county canceled swim team for the summer. We weren't going to do group swim lessons at all, but we were considering possibly doing private lessons if the family and the guard were okay with it.
Okay. Thanks, Sharon.
You just gotta dunk the kid regularly to sanitize them.
Todd, there's a question on the chat box. What are people doing with life jackets for non-swimmers?
Yeah, so this is something that we actually just discussed at our agency. Is we are still going to offer life jackets, but we're going to have sanitation protocols for them. So You'll get your life jacket out. When you're done with it, you will leave it in a used pile, and they will be sanitized before they're hung up again. So you just have to have protocols for jackets in between uses. But is anybody else doing anything with life jackets? Different, similar?
Okay.
Again, we're getting close to the end of our allotted time here. Last chance to get questions in, otherwise we'll wrap it up.
Todd, was there someone else?
Yeah, I have a question. I wanted to know the recertifications for the lifeguards and the lack of lifeguards this year because a lot of the parents didn't let their kids to work.
Yeah, that's a good question. So for lifeguard certifications, recertifications, now first up, you can, through the Red Cross, you can do a class. I put class in quotes, but essentially you fill out a form and submit it, and that will give your guards a 120-day extension on their certifications. So if they were recertified last or got certified 2 years ago in, April, May, something like that, you can do that 120 days. That'll get them most of the way through the summer. If you do need to run a class, the Red Cross has not put out guidelines other than to say, if you are in a situation where it's safe to run a class, you can run a class. They're really putting it back kind of locally on each of us to make a determination on class. For us, we are in green, so I'm gonna run a socially distanced lifeguard class. We're going to do the blended learning. So they're going to do most of the coursework online, not most of it, 7 hours worth of the coursework is going to be online. And then when they come to me, I have separate mannequins for everybody to do CPR. We're going to do the in-water rescues where I'm going to have them turn their heads the opposite direction from whoever they're rescuing to try to get through that. Because I'm in that boat too, where we have to do this to get lifeguards on. So some places are using bring a family member to do your rescues. So your family member's there to do all your rescues on, things like that. So there are ways to do it if you're comfortable doing it in a situation where you feel you can do that. So
I just put on the group chat, we had found, I forget where our one manager found it, but she found a program called Omnify. I think it's www.poolisopen.com. And it's a time slot scheduling program. It only costs $49 a month. So if anybody's looking for something like that, it's a good resource.
Good, thank you. There's some other good stuff coming up in the chat now, some different things coming up, so check that out. But we are getting to the end of our time here. So again, I do want to thank PRPS for hosting this. We'll look and see if we want to do another one here in a couple of weeks. Maybe we can do a poll out to our aquatics branch to see. I know at that point, everybody's going to be hopefully in the thick of things if you're opened up.
Mm.
But,
Todd, thank you for moderating this panel. Great job. We'll be posting a video of this roundtable as soon as we can, and also the chat. We'll make sure that it gets sent out to everyone. If you did register for this roundtable, we have your email address and things like that, so we'll make sure that everybody gets the links to both of these things. Again, good luck, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your input. I'll leave the chat open a little bit if anyone wants to throw down some more information. Otherwise, thank you for coming and sharing your views on this subject.